we did a lot of work at our Office of Innovation here at Salesforce, trying to understand what's the best way companies can actually approach the current situation we're all in from a global perspective. And we landed on three very distinct work streams.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Masterclass by President Summit, where we will address principles for profitable growth strategies with none other than Tiffany Bova, growth and innovation evangelist at Salesforce and bestselling author. Thank you so much for being here, Tiffany. It's a real pleasure having you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I wish we could be together in person, but I'm glad to be here this way.
We'll have to wait until the President Summit in November, but more about that later. My name is Frederick. I'm the CEO of President Summit, and I can't tell you guys how pleased I am by seeing all you guys tune in from around the world: London, Romania, Belgium, Germany, Edinburgh. It's amazing to see. Thank you, and welcome to each and every one. To briefly outline the format, the Masterclass will be roughly around an hour. Tiffany has prepared a brief presentation, which is sort of a preview of what you can expect at the President Summit in late November. We will open up for Q&A as well. So if you have any questions, please write them in the Q&A section. You can even upvote questions if there are any particular that you want us to address, and then we will get into that later. Yes, so I actually think without further ado, Tiffany, let's get going. I will give the word to you and maybe give a brief presentation for those of you who don't know you as well as I do. And then I'll gladly look forward to all the actionable insights that you have prepared for us.
Excellent. Well, as was mentioned by Frederick, my name is Tiffany Bova. I am the growth and innovation evangelist at Salesforce. As well, I was fortunate enough to have a Wall Street Journal bestselling book by the name of Growth IQ. I have spent 15 years of my career in a practicing sales leadership, marketing leadership, and customer service leadership role for startups, for mid-sized business, as well as Fortune 500 companies. And then I spent an entire decade at Gartner Group, which is the largest, industry's largest analyst and consulting firm in IT, as a research fellow, advising companies on how better to go to market, how to sell, how to deal with disruption, and really how to prepare themselves for growth. I worked with startups from around the world, where it was, I'm ready to hire my first sales employee, like, what do I do? All the way to working with some of the biggest organizations in the globe. And then about 4.5 years ago, I joined Salesforce. They created a position for me to continue doing the work that I was doing. And last year, I had the pleasure of traveling about 375,000 miles, which is about 600,000 kilometers. I was on 6 continents. I gave 100 keynotes and met with hundreds of clients talking about all of these things they're facing, from a growth, a digital transformation, a digital disruption, how to market, sell, and engage with their customers, how to use customer experience as a competitive differentiator. It's been fantastic. And it really led me to decide that it was time to write the book. So I tried to put all my experience and kind of all the things I had learned along the way into something I could really share in a more scalable way than me getting on an airplane, every day, every week. And now, since I'm located in Los Angeles, California, in the United States. And since we've been in and out of lockdown, we're back in lockdown again at the moment. But it's been an interesting transition for me. I'm spending a lot more time with customers, having this very conversation about this kind of great reset I see happening, and how brands and businesses, big and small, are pivoting just ever so slightly to prepare themselves for 2021 and 2022. At this point in the market, we did a lot of work at our Office of Innovation here at Salesforce, trying to understand what's the best way companies can actually approach the current situation we're all in from a global perspective. And we landed on three very distinct work streams. The first one was to stabilize the business. How can you stabilize the business? And let's go back 5 or 6 months, depending on where you are. And it was like, everything has to lock down. Everyone's staying home. Businesses have to shut down. And it was this massive stabilization, meaning I have to get people to work from home potentially, maybe not work at all, shuttered my doors. How can I keep engaged with my employees and communicate with them? How do I communicate and stay engaged with my customers? What happens to all the sales deals potentially that were on the table that you had been working? And so there was lots of activity that had to happen in that particular stream we called stabilize. The second work stream we identified was back to the office. We used to say back to work, but I don't know about you guys. I feel busier now working from home than I did sort of pre-pandemic. I feel like every minute of the day is sort of allocated, where before I might be traveling for 8 hours and, I had time to think and work. And now it's just back-to-back meetings. So, back to the office, there was an entire work stream there of how do we get our employees back safely? Should we stagger work hours? Should we stagger teams? Do we close certain parts of the floor of our offices? If you know anything about Salesforce, we've got buildings around the globe. And so we've got 55,000 employees that we actually had to stabilize, communicate to, and slowly get back to work. We've got 5 or 6 offices now. Many are in the APAC region that are slowly starting to open back up with part-time working and flexible time and teams sharing space. We've started to put up all the things we need to do to keep social distancing and keep our employees healthy while working. And then the third stream was back to growth. And that was all about, look, how can we, now that we're back to work, start to focus the tone of our messaging, the tone of our communications, the tone of the brand on really getting back to selling and getting back to marketing. And I don't mean ignoring what's going on, but right now we're so focused on those 2 first work streams that, the growth engine is just something that we have to continue to nurture no matter what. So why I spent so much time explaining that to you is that framework is something I want you to take away with you today, and know that each of those streams is managed and staffed by different people. So each team is very focused on each of those work streams. So if something happens and you have to go back and close the office, the stabilized team just starts working again. If you are going to get people back to the office and your region or your city or your country is starting to open back up and you can put more and more people back into the office, then your back to the office team is working very hard. And then you have your back to the growth team that is making sure, how are we messaging? Where are we communicating? What are we saying? What are we doing to make sure we're not doing anything that is viewed as being insensitive to the current sort of global pandemic we're dealing with? And so the Great Reset allows brands, companies, people to take a pause. Now, don't take what I'm saying as an affront to the fact that we have massive amounts of struggles going on around the world during this time. So with that aside, obviously top of mind for all of us. And the other side of that is it an opportunity for me, for our company, for my team, for our industry to look forward to what kind of company do we want to be 18 to 24 months from now? And this is a time we may hopefully never get again, in the sense that people are allowing brands and companies and employees to just sort of take the time to reset. So that's really where this Great Reset and pivoting for future growth came from. That was a lot of information to sort of begin, but it's the only way I can really start to, get the conversation going. So navigating this sort of growth dilemma, when I wrote my book, one of the opening paragraphs, literally, and hopefully I can at some point give a refresh to the book, because one of the very first paragraphs said, look, this book is about top line growth, and it's about recovering from a growth stall that you may be experiencing. And the statistic that I used at the beginning of the book was, regardless of size, some 85% of businesses around the globe will hit a growth stall at some point during their history. And for me, a growth stall means that if you were growing at 10%, You're growing at 9% the next quarter, 6% the next quarter, 2% the next quarter. That's going in the wrong direction. I would say you're on your way to a growth stall after a couple of quarters of no growth or negative growth. And then if you've just been flat and not able to turn the engine back on to growth, I would also say that that's a growth stall. But what I said at the end of that paragraph was without a black swan event. And here we are. We are in what many call a black swan event, where it is something that was unexpected, highly impactful. And while many will argue we knew we were going to have, as a human race, another pandemic at some point in time, nobody really knew when it was. Were we as prepared as we could be? I think in pockets of the world, people were more prepared than others. But ultimately, it was not something we could predict from a timing standpoint. And so that black swan event has thrown a wrench into what we were all trying to do. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the black swan, it was like no one thought a black swan existed. And then they saw one in Australia. And so then it was like, wait, that's a black swan moment. It's like the world is flat, and the world was flat until someone figured out the world was round, right? And so it's when something happens that has huge impact on humans, on the globe, on business, et cetera. So navigating this growth dilemma starts in one place. So now I've spent, 9 or 10 minutes talking about this context. Context is the first starting point of my book. And these two sketches highlight that context is situational, right? There's a gentleman who's stuck on an island and he's waiting for someone to save him, and he sees a boat and he goes, I'm saved, right? Boat. And the guy on the boat goes, I'm stuck in this boat and I'm looking for land, and land, I see it. But both situations are they're thinking the other is going to save them, when really in reality, neither one is going to save either one. Now they have a little company, I guess, but ultimately they're going to either be both on the boat or both on the island, right? And so context is how you look and perceive what's going on in the market, but it's also your ability to look across the landscape and say, what's happening in my industry? What are my competitors doing? What is my culture like? What are my customers want? What is my product category? What are the things that are happening around me from a governmental standpoint or regulations? Like, that is your individual context. Now, let me be really clear here. There is no other you from a company perspective. Nobody else has your employees. Nobody else has your company name. Nobody else has your culture. Nobody else has your customers, although, you know what I mean by that, right? In this particular example, and maybe they might be buying things from other people, but maybe they're only buying what you sell from you. So no one else has your customers, and no one else has sort of your vision and your passion for what it is that you're doing. So if you spend too much time watching what your competitors are doing, you're not taking into consideration your own business's context. And that's the starting point for any decisions you need to make going forward is, what is your context? Now, everything that was your context 6 months ago is very different today. And so I don't want you to necessarily base the answer to those questions on today, knowing that slowly we're going to get ourselves out of this. And timing maybe a year from now, maybe 2 years from now. But at the end of the day, you have to have flexibility in the context. You could say, during the pandemic sort of context, and what do we think it might look like coming out of it? And that's something that the market calls scenario planning. And so thinking about how can you scenario plan if we're closed for another 6 months, if we're closed for another year, if we're closed for another 18 months or another 24 months, how do you behave? What do you do around getting back to the office, preparing yourself for growth? What are the things you can actually try and improve? So that really leads me to the concept of the book. Over the 10 years of time that I worked at Gartner, I took 5,000 calls with customers. One-man shops, 50,000 companies, 250,000 employee companies. It didn't matter. I was able to really categorize each of the questions that came around growth into these 10 growth paths, is what I called them. Now, none of them should be of surprise to you, except maybe the last one, unconventional strategies. I started at customer experience and I went clockwise and ended at unconventional strategies. Unconventional strategies is really about businesses doing well by doing good and purpose over profit. and using really the company as a brand ambassador for environmental issues or equality or ethical uses of technology, whatever it might be, but really trying to leave the world, the planet, and your society a better place for you being in it. So that's probably one that was unique in this, but I felt that the timing was right for me from a career perspective to include that. But I will tell you that in the presentations I've been doing and the meetings I've been doing with customers, there are three that are the most critical at this point. One is customer experience. How can you continue to make sure your customers know that you're there for them, you're there to help, but you're also there to service them because they may be still working. There are many that are still selling and growing and experiencing no growth stall at this point, depending on what industry they're in, or even if they decided to do a little bit of a pivot. Keeping close to the core is a famous story by Lego, right around pivoting a little bit from the core, from toys, and saying, how do we make this kind of more of a internet-based collaborative, sort of community experience? That's just taking a little pivot from the toy. And so, but it had everything to do with the experience people have. It was one-dimensional if you were building a toy. It becomes 2- and 3-dimensional if you open it up to community and to groups, as well as just acquiring information about what products do people want next. And it's actually one of the stories in my book. So I have a fondness for Lego. I always have. I played with them as a kid and I put them in my book. So there you go. And the next one is customer-based penetration. This one I'm really passionate about. I would tell you that customer-based penetration is about the customer and not the prospect. I believe this year is more about the customer than it is the prospect. Many companies are so focused on trying to acquire customers from a marketing and selling perspective that they forget about the customers they already have. And so you cannot be so focused on going and getting new business and then just completely ignore those that you have. And there's so much power in all the money and time and effort you've spent on getting those customers in the first place, that this is how you can do it. The third one is optimize sales. If you already have salespeople, could they be doing better? And my first response is going to be pretty consistently and statistically from research, about 55% of your salespeople will miss quota this year. And imagine that was at January 1st. Imagine what it is now, considering so many businesses are shut down and so many people are not working. And so that number is really compressed. That means you have to have more ability with the sales resources you have today to either sell back into the base or go find net new customers. And the fourth one, I know I said three, it depends if you're in a recurring revenue business. Churn is really important. If you can deliver good customers experiences, you're paying attention to your customers, you won't lose them. And I'm also seeing many unusual partnerships being struck during this time, not only to solve sort of the social problems of having car manufacturers making ventilators for hospitals, like those kinds of partnerships I understand, but I'm talking about, companies that may have competed head to head, and now they're saying, look, we need to find ways to partner together and really put our customers at the center of the decisions that we make. And so if we can serve them better by being somehow connected, then let's do that. So that's sort of a loose framework that I hope I get to spend more time talking about in November. But that'll sort of give you a little bit of a starting point. Now, for me, growth is a thinking game. Look, you have to outthink your competition. Whether it's you're going to outthink them on what products you develop, how you sell, where you sell, what you do when you market, how you service and support. It's really about thinking differently. And that happens with starting with a beginner's mind. Now, let me explain what that means. It's sort of from the Buddhist culture, but I don't need you to forget everything you know. What I need you to do is give a little bit of space, 15% of your capacity, and be willing to unlearn and relearn something. So maybe you've always done it this way. And so you need to unlearn and then relearn now going forward. What's the best way going to be going forward? And if you're not open to unlearning and relearning, the challenge is you're going to end up in a place that is no longer relevant, because when we come out of this pandemic from a global perspective, business, work, healthcare, education, transportation is going to look drastically different. What that is, I don't know, but I will tell you that the only way you can prepare yourself is you've got to give yourself some space to have that beginner's mind. The next thing I'd say is you have to start with your people. If you expect your customers to love your brand, the fastest way to do that is to get your employees to love their job. So if your employees love their job, they will deliver good service to your customers. If your customers love you as a brand, they will spend more money. They're less likely to churn. They'll buy more. They'll forgive you if you do something wrong. They'll try your products, new products that you're launching into market. You have to make sure your employees are okay. So I'm going to go back to the stabilize comment I made at the beginning. Stabilize is all about your people. If your people are unsure of the future, there's lots of anxiety, you have to take care of their mental health. You have to make sure they feel secure. Many of them are home having to do childcare at this moment and work. There's a lot of stress. And so you want to make sure that your employees are taken care of. I said a few minutes ago that this is the year of the customer, not the prospect. I really want you to go back into your basic customers and make sure they have what they need. But more importantly, you have to lead with the values of your company. Who are you? Are you a brand that your employees and your customers can trust? Are you transparent in communication if something goes wrong? Trust me when I tell you, going back to that unconventional strategies at sort of the 11 o'clock over there, or the 23 o'clock, depending on where you are in the world. But how you behave at this time from a values perspective, how you treat your employees, how you're treating your customers. Are you giving back to your communities? Are you trying to do things, donate time or money or food or some of your technology or some of your products and services? Your customers, your community, your industry will not forget how you behave during this time. So you really want to show up with who you are. And once again, maybe this is a time to go back and rethink, what are your values? What is your culture? How can you improve it? And that is that what you do today will impact tomorrow, right? In all kinds of ways. If you can't get people back to work safely, then you're really in trouble. If you get your people back to work and your customers have all abandoned you because you haven't communicated with them in 5 months, you're in trouble. If you go out with something that is a little insensitive to the current times, then you're like sort of trying to recover and make up for things. So think about what you're doing today. But at the end of the day, change starts with you. Change starts with each of you who have chosen to spend your time with us here today. We can all make a lot more money, but we can't make more time. And so, the fact that you take an hour out of your day to do and attend something like this means that at the beginning, the first bullet, you are willing to listen and learn and try to, hear what's going on around you so that you can have that beginner's mind. This is an amazing step. I'm always very appreciative when people take time out of their day to get online or come see me on stage or listen to a podcast or read my book, because at the end of the day, it's like you're investing in yourself. And if you don't invest in you, nobody else will. So this is a great way to do that while, we're dealing with all these other things. So further inspiration for you. This is my podcast. It's called What's Next with Tiffany Bova. You can listen to it on iTunes or Spotify, SoundCloud, kind of in all the platforms. Obviously the book, that is the US cover. This is the UK cover. So in case you go to your bookstores, but it's also translated in Korean, simple Chinese, Portuguese, Spanish, Polish. What am I missing? Missing a few, I'm sure. But anyway, so that's it for me. I think that's a good start to the conversation. I look forward to getting questions from all of you.
Absolutely, and we're missing Danish there, Tiffany, but we'll work on that. But absolutely, I love it. We've mentioned Lego, and Lego is even from the part of Denmark where I'm from, so I love that. And we've gotten into some really, really tangible insights already, and I see that we've gotten a lot of questions in the Q&A section as well. So please continue do that. And I also want to say, Paula, I saw there that you're looking forward to the summit, Tiffany and I as well. And for the people who have read Tiffany's book, absolutely amazing. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Completely agree with Tiffany at that point. Also want to mention to you guys, it is a moment of inspiration. It is a moment of insights. And therefore, I have made a deal with Tiffany that we wanted to surprise you guys and sort of say, not only do we want you guys to grab a colleague and hopefully join us both at the President's Summit at a reduced discount, actually secure 3 tickets for the price of 2, but also get Tiffany's book, Growth IQ, included, which you can then bring with you to the President's Summit, where you will have a chance to meet Tiffany as well and discuss much more about the growth mindset. The offer will only be available for the next hour, but feel free to grab a colleague. We've been included a 30-day free cancellation policy. So if you need to get hold of a colleague, you can do that tomorrow. Absolutely no strings attached there. Just want to give you that sort of opportunity.
And I just want to give a little shout out to Sammy. Oh, no, let's see, Sophie, for finishing my book. Thank you, Sophie. I appreciate it.
There we go. There we go. Exactly. Well, wonderful. Let's delve more into the details here. Tiffany, we've gotten a great question. I had my own question prepared, but I actually want to start off by a question from Peter. He's asking, what is your perspective on what should be the sales time spent on existing versus new customers? I think this is so relevant, so I'll get back to mine afterward.
Great question. So here's the question I would ask back to you if we were able to have a conversation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you thinking that? Are you thinking it's the same resource? That gets me a little nervous, right? Where the same person would be selling to the base and selling to net new. The challenge with that is, and I say this with the utmost respect, because I consider myself still a salesperson, although I don't carry a quota and sell anymore. I grew up selling, and that's really my love. It takes a very specific kind of seller to be able to navigate between those two kinds of activities and mindsets. The other thing on that is that a person will tend to default to whatever they're most comfortable doing, or what's going to retire their quota the fastest, unfortunately. Yeah. And so they may only focus on selling into the base, or they may only focus on, what is it that you need to do to go out and get net new customers. So the challenge for me on that is, if it's the same person, then you have to give them very specific directions on what you want them to do and how you want them to do it. If you leave it up to them to decide, where and how should I be making my time investments, it gets very tricky. Now, if you're a sales team of 2 people or 4 people, that's where I'd say maybe you split the team, right? 2 people are doing net new customer acquisition, and 2 people are doing customer-based penetration. But remember, you have customer service that can go into the base as a customer success organization. You also have marketing that can do account-based marketing into the base of customers. So it doesn't only have to be human. We can do things that are more predictive and automated. Now, it's not lost on me. I happen to work at Salesforce, but I would have said that anyway, right? If it's not Salesforce, it has to be something. I hope and wish it's us, right? Obviously. But at the end of the day, you have to do something. So I would say, from just a quick answer without a conversation is, you really want to focus the resources, give them the enablement they need. We say in the States, like the plays. So, what are the step-by-step initiatives you want them to do to go after net new customers and or go to the base, and give them all the tools and content that they need in order to be successful doing it. That's the best short answer I can give without being able to have a conversation.
Yeah, Peter, you'll have to ask Tiffany in person at the President's Summit. We can go much more into detail there, but I think it was a great answer to the question there, Tiffany. I just want to jump in here and sort of take it back. Obviously, we've talked about the global pandemic, how that has had affected different companies. Obviously, it has hindered growth for quite a few companies, people, but also improved growth for others. For those companies where growth has sort of been hindered and limited, if you could only give them one advice on what you should do tomorrow, what sort of advice would that be? And I know it's a bit putting you on the spot there, but that's why you're great. So what would that advice be?
So I'm going to answer it this way. I'd say maybe 12 years ago, I would have answered that question right away.
Yeah.
And when I started doing the work for Growth IQ, the literally kind of almost the opening line of the book is, the one thing about growth is it's never one thing. So that's my answer. But the reason I said that was because through the research for the book, I actually realized that it really wasn't an isolated effort that made you grow or not grow. It was a combination of a lot of things. So for example, if I were to say to you, really, I'm being serious now, if it's customer-based penetration is going to be a lower acquisition cost, it's going to be a faster time to acquisition potentially. But if you don't have the right message and marketing and sales team aligned to do that, it won't be successful. So that's why I say combination. So in the book, it's context, combination, and then sequence. And combination is multiple of those paths on that growth image I shared with you. You're always going to want customer experience because you want the experience to be good. You always want to make sure you're selling well. So those two are kind of pretty constant. And then it's the other ones you then need to pick. Am I going to launch a new product? Am I going to sell more into my base? Am I going to, go into a new market? Am I going to strike a partnership? But still, those things tend to be fairly common.
Makes sense. And how do you improve your customer experience in a time like this one, where you're not actually able to meet face-to-face with your customers? Obviously, you can do, online stuff as webinars, and you can have these Zoom meetings and so forth. But how do you focus on improving customer experience in a time where you're actually not able to meet face-to-face with your customers?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we did because I think that that's helpful. It's a great example. But at the end of the day, we have to get better at listening to our customers. We have to get better to listening to our employees. The answer to the question about the best way to grow is ask your customers and ask your employees. That's one of the other things that I say, right? Because your frontline people tend to know what's happening long before the executive team knows, because they're in the face, sort of either on the phone now or chat, or in some cases face-to-face, depending on where you are in the world, right? Having these conversations. And so the voice of the customer is really important. There's a saying here in the United States that, if you had asked people a long time ago what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. They never would have said, I want a car, because they never imagined that they wanted a car. And
Henry Ford.
I always keep this close because this is my other example. Nobody thought, and yes, this is a first generation iPod.
There we go.
There we go. And so nobody would have said, I want to have this in my hand. Right. Yeah. And then for sure, they'd be like, and, I don't necessarily, we've gone sort of all the way full circle here. Yeah. And so sometimes our customers don't know what they want. So it's more about asking and listening. And then the way that they answer the question, there may be little nuggets in there that are going to direct you to what you should be focused on next. But if you just say, what do you want from us? They're not going to know. But it could be a question like, where are your challenges in business right now? What are the things you're learning with your customers or with your employees? And as you start to gather that information, it may uncover some opportunity for you. So I'm a firm believer in, I used to say, get out of your office and go meet with customers and employees. But now it's reach out to customers and employees and ask them. And that really is this untapped, wealth of information and ideas that many executives don't spend time doing, right? They're working so hard and fast, trying to chase the business and solve everything. That's why at the beginning of my presentation, I said to take this pause and have these conversations you normally don't have the time to have. And then that really prepares you for the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. And first of all, thank you so much to everyone who made use of the offer so far. We look forward to meeting you both, or all of you. Me and Tiffany do at the President's Summit. One other question that we've gotten. Yeah. Fingers crossed. Yeah. One great question that we have gotten from Gabriel, who, hello, Gabriel. He's a pleasure having you back. A great question from Gabriel is, what have you recently unlearned and relearned in terms of what your comment was there? I think that's a pretty good one, and curious to see your answer or hear your answer on this one.
Well, for me, for me personally, the way I communicate is usually on stage or in person. So yeah. I had to learn, as you can tell, I am not in a fancy studio, like this is my home office. I had to set up a studio, so I've got mics and lights and all kinds of things going on and cameras. So I had to learn how to give an engaging and compelling presentation that draws people in to want to stay and listen virtually, right? And that's a very different skill than standing on stage, right? And being able to see the audience and see the ability, are you resonating? Do they like what you're saying? Are people leaving? Are they looking at their phone? Are they reading the newspaper? I mean, I've seen it all. And so I would tell you that for me, it was, how do I unlearn my stage presence, right? And learn how to be as engaging as I can in this format. And that means that, you almost have to give more because it's such a small image, right, of what you're seeing, depending on what you're watching this webinar on. So for me, just from a pure what I do every day, I'd say that, right, and putting out content in different ways. That's been a learning for me, because it's always been the way I've done it for so long. For almost 15 years, it's been the same sort of way I've sort of shared content. But from a other side, really thinking about the concept of jobs to be done as a way to look for ways to improve business performance. I dug very deep into it, and that has really helped open my eyes to how can I advise clients. That came from Clayton Christensen. He wrote a book called Competing Against Luck, which is a great book if you're trying to learn about jobs to be done. But during the last recession in the US, probably 10 or 15 companies that are keeping us all connected right now were founded during the last recession. And so it's really the opportunity for what are we going to learn now that, especially around healthcare, education, and things like that, that we can improve upon so that 5 or 10 years from now, we're much more prepared if something like this happens. So that was what I did, is I had to kind of rethink how I present content. And then secondarily, from a pure, research and work and thinking perspective, it was digging into jobs to be done.
Makes sense. And I think in terms of recession and everything, the good Churchill who said, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? So that's what we're all trying to capitalize on right now.
There's another question in here from Yuka on my experience is that customers rarely know what they really want, actually. Exactly what I was saying. If you ask them what they want, they're not going to say this, right? What they're going to say is, when I'm running, I wish that music would be better. And so they're describing to you this, but they're not saying, I want this little thing that has this little screen and it has a little dial. That's not what they're saying. So that's that jobs to be done concept. And I'll give you a quick example. The saying goes, right, people don't buy a 1/4-inch drill bit. They have to buy the 1/4-inch hole. But they don't actually buy either. What they buy is hanging a shelf on the wall. That's what they want to do. That's the job to be done. The job to be done is hang the shelf. The job to be done is not drill the hole. So that's what you have to say, is that you have to be able to string it all the way. So if you think Uber, the job to be done was getting someone from point A to point B, and I want to lean in on a better experience than I would get in a taxi or that I would get driving my own car. So that was a job to be done. And I want to make it seamless and frictionless. And I'm just going to remove one job in the stack of owning a car, is getting from point A to point B when I don't have my car. And so that's that job to be on concept. So that is exactly correct. That's the right. They don't know what they want. So this is about getting much better at asking questions, listening, and then you uncover those jobs to be done that in fact they don't even know they need or that they want. Like, who knew we wanted something in our hand that consumes our life?
But I guess that's really the difference between features and benefits, right? what I'm hearing is that customers are often in here talking about the benefits, right? They want a shelf up on the wall. And then you got to figure out what sort of features is it that I as a company need to provide my customers with in order to get them to those benefits. Again, that starts with the whole, but it actually starts with the drilling. So that's really, captivating the purpose of the end goal.
If you learn about that concept of, and there's a lot out there, if you Google jobs to be done, right, you'll find a ton of stuff. So, but it really, I have to tell you, it really helps me answer questions and advise clients and shape my thinking, because in my head, when someone says something, all I'm doing is trying to get to the actual job they're trying to do. What is it they're really trying to do? Are they trying to, capture leads, or are they really trying to be better at selling to customers, right? Well, they're trying to be better at selling to customers. All they're talking about is leads. And it's like, well, but that's not what you're really trying to do. What you're really trying to do is close business more quickly at a higher, and so you have to really start to listen. But this is a great opportunity from a, learn and unlearn, is asking better questions, how to ask questions. But more importantly, in many situations, and I'm guilty of it as well, is when someone is answering, I'm already formulating my next question. So I'm not really listening. And I've really had to work hard on listening better, because in this medium, it's very challenging, right? Because you can't see, most of the time you don't see facial expressions. You don't know whether what you've just said resonated. You don't see that when they do that. What is she talking about? You don't see those little, signals, right? Or facial expressions that help you know if it's working or not. So really getting better at asking and listening is critical.
A good quote to live by, I think that I use quite a lot, and especially in a time like this, because we do have a lot of online meetings like this one, is that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions, because you only get as great answers as the questions that you ask, right? So that is certainly something that I think is noteworthy to sort of have in your back of your mind before asking a person. And it's the same thing goes with credibility, right? We could ask a person on the street about how would you grow your business, but we could also ask Tiffany Bova, and it's probably a different story that we get there, right? Because the credibility level is just different. To take it really, really tangible and take a deeper dive into it, because I think we have a lot of people right now with us engaging in this specific topic. We talk about asking the customers. How do you ask customers? Like, is it surveys? Do you call people? Like, what should companies do tomorrow to actually get a better understanding of what it is that their customers want?
Yeah, well, this all depends on what industry you're in, what kind of company you're in, and more importantly, what culture you have, right? This goes back to what's the culture of the brand. But I would say, when the pandemic first hit and we locked down and shut everything down, how many emails I got from companies I hadn't heard from in years. I'm like, I didn't even know I did business with you. It had been so long, but I would get this, we're here for you. What can we do to help, et cetera. And so I don't like the inauthentic communication in those kinds of things. But if you're a small business, I think literally picking up the phone or setting up a Zoom meeting, going back to an example we did, our CEO challenged us to 1 million video calls as a company. To reach out and touch customers, ask questions. And that's why I sort of leaned into that topic, because we all had to go on this path of learning how to ask. And literally something as simple as saying, today, I want you to ask 2 questions to people that you maybe wouldn't have asked previously, and then just listen. And then if they ask something back, maybe even just say, I don't know, let me think about it. Because, you really did it because you wanted to hear their response. But just ask and listen and ask and listen. And especially, in sales, the most successful salespeople statistically, because one of our partners actually will listen to sales conversations, everything is dumped into AI, and then they'll see how many questions did a salesperson ask, how long did they talk, how many questions did the customer ask, questions did they ask, and how long did the customer talk. And when it's too much salesperson question and a lot of talking and not enough customer, they don't close as much as when it's in the reverse, right? So that's why asking questions is so important. So maybe it is a phone call, maybe it is getting small groups of customers together and doing a joint Zoom call, and then letting them network and putting them into rooms and creating an environment where people can, actually engage with each other. and then make sure that you do it on the employee side as well. And so, surveys are good, but I think at this time, unless you're massive and have hundreds of thousands or millions of customers, I think the personal touch goes a long way. So if possible, even us, 55,000 employees, a couple 100,000 customers, it was go make a million connections via video to our customers. And it every little bit helps. Every little bit helps.
Let me make it very transparent right here, right now, then, because we have a lot of people that are tuning in for President Summit that are right now listening in. If there's anything that we at President Summit can do that you would like to see more of or hear more of, please write it here in the comment section or shoot me a private email on frederick.lindeberg@presidents-summit.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I was super inspired by what Tiffany just said. So why not be an example of that? And to that, I also want to say hello, Carl, Marcus, Jennifer, Peter. I was just informed by the team that all of you guys have just secured the ticket and book from Tiffany. So look forward to meeting you all. Absolutely wonderful.
There's a question from Dan about Central London likely to shut down the office till 2021. And we're probably in the same situation here in the States as well. How do you keep a cohesive culture when everyone is distributed? This is that importance of connection, right? And that's why that stabilized team is the one that should be the one that is focused on how do we keep the culture and the people engaged. So once again, I'll just go back to us. Once a week, as a matter of fact, right now, I am missing the all hands Salesforce call, which is an internal company call that happens once a week. Our entire executive leadership team and our board of directors get on a call, and it's employees from around the world. And we have a product called Chatter where we can all post questions similar to what you guys are doing to the right over here. And they answer questions and then they tell us, here's what's going on in the business. Here's what's going on where we're opening. Here's what's happening from an employee perspective. Here's what's happening from a customer and a product perspective. We'll have somebody come on inspirational and that's what we do to make sure everyone stays engaged. Then once a day or twice a day, we have something called Be Well. And so you can go to Twitter and search hashtag Be Well with the Salesforce Twitter handle, and you will see that anybody can join that. It used to just be for us, and now we opened it up about 2 or 3 months ago. And so once or twice a day, we're sort of saying like, we're going to read stories to kids so parents can get a half-hour break. We're going to have, Chrissy Hines from London, her London flat, giving a small concert and talking about what she's doing during this time to stay creative and curious and all of those things. Or we have, we had Drew Barrymore come on. We've had Serena Williams come on. We've had people from around the globe come on and talk. We had Yo-Yo Ma give a concert. It's just been fantastic, but that's a way to keep everybody connected and feeling like they have a safe place to go if they're struggling. We've spent a lot of time on mental health and wellness and making sure that, because everyone's dealing with this in different ways. And, especially if you have, a household where you have everybody home working and the kids aren't in school, it becomes very, very challenging. So I would say this is about making sure you stay in a cadence of communication with your people. So even though they're not in the office, they know where, they stand and they know what's going on. Now, I've worked from home for almost 15 years. So this wasn't a shift for me. What's a shift for me is I haven't been on an airplane in 5 months, which is the longest in 20 years. I mean, literally, in the last 3 years, I've flown 1 million miles. For me, not to be on an airplane for 5 months my body is, I think, still trying to figure it out. Being on the same time zone, sleeping in the same bed, and being in my own house for this long has been strange, but good, but strange. So I hope that answers the question, Dan.
It is certainly a strange time, and I just saw your message there, Alexander. I've left my email down there. Also, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if that's what you prefer. I'd love to hear your opinions on it. Tiffany, of the growth patterns that you mentioned earlier, the 10 growth patterns, what is sort of the one pattern that you see companies struggle with the most? Is there like a common theme that goes over and over again where you see, this is continuously what companies are struggling with?
Yeah, I'd say the number one thing companies struggle with is internal inertia.
Internal inertia.
We've always done it this way. We don't do it that way. We tried this. It didn't work 5 years ago. So we're not going to try it again. That doesn't fit our culture. And so the resistance to change is actually what holds most businesses back. And we are in a massive change at the moment. And for all the companies we've seen that had been delaying digital transformation projects and digitizing the back office and investing in remote tools and actually allowing employees to work from home a couple days a week. Because some businesses were like, never going to happen. And now here we are, right? Or I'm not going to remotely service that product. Well, now it's like IoT robots, are really important to the global supply chain, because if people can't work, we still need things to happen. So that combination of human and machine. And so there was a research project done by Bain, a big consulting group,
which will be at the President Summit as well. Their global CEO. Yeah.
So it was 90% or more in companies bigger than 5 billion. And it was like in the high 80% range for businesses under 5 billion, which is the majority. Internal inertia was the number one reason they were not able to build a sustainable and repeatable growth engine. Not customers. Obviously the black swan throws a wrench in a lot of this, but it was not external factors is what I'm trying to say. And so for me, one of the questions was, what's the one thing? That's why that culture internally of being willing to try, fail, learn, you don't win or lose, you win or learn. And so, let people fail, let them try new things. And that's the one thing I think that holds people back. And right now it's like, we have to digitize things so rapidly, because not everybody who worked in an office had a laptop they could take home. Then not everybody had high-speed internet. I mean, as I mentioned, I'm in Los Angeles, and when this first happened, Starbucks was closed, and it's about, there's in the States, there's a Starbucks on like every second corner, right? So it was like, a half a mile from my house, and I was driving by it because I had to go to the pharmacy, and same parking lot, and the parking lot at Starbucks was full, and I was very confused. Why is that? So I drove through. Sure enough, people were sitting in their cars, and sometimes it was, one person, or sometimes it was an entire family, and they were getting free Wi-Fi from Starbucks. Yeah. And so, unless people have access to internet connectivity, and I posted something today that there's still like, I think it was like 30 million people or something in India, like still don't have, internet access in the big cities. So, it's all of this. We have to rethink the way that we're going to really approach things. And so ultimately at the end of the day, it's beginner's mind, be willing to fail, make sure you understand the culture and values of your brand, make sure your people are safe, during this time, and more importantly, healthy. But also at the same time, making sure that you are creating an environment where people can actually find ways to get the business back up and running and growing. And I know there are certain areas in Europe that are opening back up. I know there are certain areas in Asia that are opening back up. But, like in the United States, we're locked down. I can't travel to Europe. I can't travel to Asia. The moment travel starts again, that's a different story. Things may lock back down again. So it's just a matter of we've got to, find a way to work our way through this very unusual time.
I can't tell you how many memories it brought up when you talked about the Starbucks story. So I've been on vacation probably 15 times in the States or something like that. And every time me and my brother, when we were younger, we obviously didn't have a signal there. So we would always go to Starbucks. I can't tell you how many Frappuccinos that I've, eaten basically over my years to get that free Wi-Fi. So I definitely can relate to that. It's a good business model now, looking back in hindsight. But when I was 12 years old, it just seemed like a logic place to hang out. But
Wi-Fi is free, right? But everything we've just talked about falls apart if people don't have access to Wi-Fi. And I think that, during this time, we've found so much inequality, even more so than we knew going in, for food and for access to technology and healthcare and education. And so this goes back to that unconventional strategy. Like, how do we try to leave the world better than how we found it? And from a technology standpoint, so many things rely on big tech companies to try to solve these problems, but doing it in an ethical way. And I can tell you, for us, we actually have a chief ethical and humane use of technology officer. And in the Fortune 500, I think we're the only ones. And we had a project that was AI related that our chief scientist actually shut down. He was like, we don't agree with what this is, the potential of this has for humanity and for the globe, and we shut it down. And now you see IBM and Microsoft even doing things with facial recognition because of everything that's going on in the US, that they didn't want that to have access. So, I think that there's so much good that can happen. And then, unfortunately, there's the opposite side of that coin. But, if we all can try to make it a little bit better every single day, then I have hope.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Tiffany, we've been on for about 55 minutes now, and I know that we could continue this wonderful chat. And luckily, we will have the chance to do that at the President Summit, and maybe even in the future during another webinar, hopefully. But we will definitely have an opportunity to do so at the President Summit with many of the lovely people that are right now tuning in. I very much look forward to it. Before we round off completely, I promised you that there will be a little lightning round, top of mind questions. So without further ado, if you are ready, then we will delve into that. Are you good?
I am ready.
Amazing. Okay, guys, buckle in. Here we go. Tiffany Bova, what is the best advice that you have ever gotten?
Trust the process.
Trust the process, like the Philly 76ers, as anybody follows basketball, but I guess.
Literally, like, don't try to force it. Don't try to think that this is the right way. Like, sometimes it goes backwards to go forwards and up, down, and down to go up. So trust the process.
Trust the process. I think that's makes sense. Second thing would be favorite thing to do outside of work, besides hanging on our webinar, of course, but other than that.
Well, I was born and raised in Hawaii. So in the ocean is my favorite thing to do. And I haven't been able to get home for 5 months. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to Hawaii. I can't get back. So anyway, yeah, I would say, anything to do with being outdoors in Hawaii, I'm in.
Maui or Honolulu? What island? Honolulu.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Of course.
Yeah,
Hence
my Hawaii coffee cup.
There we go. I once visited, and it was the first time that I actually felt like I was in an actual picture. It's everything that you've seen and more to it. It's wonderful, absolutely stunning. The third question would be, what person inspires you the most at the moment? It doesn't have to be all time, but like currently, who is the number one person that inspires you the most?
Let me tell you what's so hard about that particular question is, as many of you know, I'm blessed. I have 25 conversations a day with people who absolutely inspire me. So it's kind of like I have these inspiring conversations, and that's my job. And I meet with and talk with really inspiring people. That's my job. So, I'd say all of you, your questions, you're inspiring me to know that, the things that I'm doing and I'm saying are resonating. And so I do it for you guys. So, ultimately I love to learn. I'm curious, but, I want to make sure, like I said, I'm not wasting your time. You're going to spend an hour with me. I want to make sure. So I think the people I interact with on a daily basis and I get to meet in environments like this are what inspires me. I mean, outside of the big inspirational people like that, you could say my mom or, something like that. But, I get inspired every single day to wake up, buckle up and be like, what am I going to do today? And how can I add value and help? And I'd say that the market and the people that are connected with me, I call them my tribe. I love my tribe and they inspire me every day.
Amazing, absolutely amazing, and we are so thankful that you wanted to spend an hour of your precious time as well to inspire us. I have certainly learned a couple of things, and I think I'll go back and speak to many of my employees and hear how they're doing. I guess that's my takeaway from this one. Absolutely amazing, and again, thank you so much for all the questions that we've gotten and the tickets that have been secured and everything else. Quickly going to the next and final question. What is the best purchase that you have ever made under $200?
Wow. Huh. Well, right now, I'd say a comfortable chair.
a comfortable
You know,
chair.
or the little pad I'm standing on below that was like $40 and the best thing I ever spent $40 on. Trust me, it's like, oh, my little feet feel so much better because I'm actually standing. You know, many people do these presentations sitting and it's a very different energy. So I stand when I do it. So I'd say the pad under my foot right now, my feet right now. That I'm going to go simple, totally simple. And
I love it. I love it. The pad under your feet is the real MVP of this webinar. Absolutely love it. Tiffany, we are completely out of time, but it was absolutely amazing to have you with us today. I think people learned a lot. I learned a ton, and I can't wait to meet you in person at the President's Summit, along with all the wonderful people that have been tuning in today and are also joining us. I want to say a brief thank you to Henry, to Sam, to Paula, to all the other people that have made use of the offer. I'm glad that we can inspire each other and also meet up in person to hopefully further continue our knowledge sharing abilities to help both companies, but also the world in total to hopefully a better place. That is so much appreciated. I have received a lot of practical questions, Tiffany, so I'll be staying on for a couple of minutes to just ask those. But I want to say thank you so much. And please stay safe and reach out to me if there's anything at all I can do to you.
Yes, absolutely. And for all of you who joined, really, I so appreciate you choosing to spend a little bit of time with me today. I hope you found it valuable. Please follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter and, leave me any comments that you have. I tried to answer as many of the questions that I can, but once again, to all of you who had said you've read the book, I thank you so much. And thanks a lot, Frederick, for having me. And I hope to see you guys in Copenhagen soon.
Definitely. We'll catch up on the Q&A questions once we get to end of November. I will screenshot them and I'll personally go around to Henrik and all the other guys and saying, hey, we need to discuss this question. So looking forward to it.
All right.
Amazing.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you. Thank you so much.